Today is August 14th. It's the 227th day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. On this day in 1994, the international terrorist known as Carlos the Jackal is captured after 2 decades on the run. Carlos the Jackal is born in 1949 in Venezuela. That's, of course, not his real name. His father is a dedicated Marxist, and against his wife's wishes, he names his son Ilyich Ramirez Sanchez, after Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. Ilyich's younger brothers are also named after Lenin. His middle brother is named Lenin. He goes by Lenny. And the youngest, Vladimir. In his teens, Ilyich joins the Venezuelan Communist Party youth group, and he also attends a guerrilla warfare summer camp in Cuba. All I ever did at summer camp was orienteering. When his parents divorce in 1966, his mother takes the kids with her to London. 2 years later, his father enrolls him in school in Moscow. And in 1970, Ilyich Ramirez Sanchez drops out of school, makes his way to Beirut, and joins the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the PFLP. It's part of the PLO. It is the PFLP who dub him Carlos because he's from South America. They're clever like that. He trains as a guerrilla fighter, spends some time on the front lines in Jordan, and then is off to London to continue his education. But he also continues working with the PFLP. He's part of a failed assassination attempt in London, and also a failed bomb attack in London. And he takes part in a failed rocket attack on an El Al jet in Paris. In 1975, French intelligence close in on Carlos in Paris for the rocket attack. But he kills 2 intelligence agents and an informant and escapes, fleeing to Beirut. This is a pivotal moment in the story of Carlos. He's bungled pretty much every operation he's been a part of so far. He's a big talker and a poor shot. However, now, he's slipped out from under the DST, French intelligence, after killing 2 of its agents. The DST has been unable to catch this second-rate revolutionary. To save face, the French portray Carlos as a shrewd master terrorist. It's the first brushstrokes of the Carlos myth. And it's after the murder of the French agents, too, that Carlos earns the nickname the Jackal, a moniker bestowed upon him by a reporter for the Guardian newspaper, who gets access to Carlos's London apartment and finds, among other things, a copy of the Frederick Forsyth novel about a professional assassin entitled The Day of the Jackal, which the Guardian reporter assumes Carlos is reading. It turns out it's not even his book. But the brand is established and ready to be built into the myth of Carlos the Jackal. Although, truth be told, he prefers to be called Johnny. Other Western intelligence agencies pile on the Carlos myth. It's not just the French. The CIA and others find it useful to have the super-terrorist Carlos as an adversary. Carlos embraces his newfound fame, happy to brag about being the famous Carlos. And the PFLP are happy to have such a formidable secret weapon in their organization. At the end of 1975, the PFLP puts him in charge of an attack on the headquarters of OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, in Vienna, Austria. During a high-level meeting, Carlos and 5 others take more than 60 hostages, including top OPEC officials from Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Venezuela. The hostages are to be held until PFLP demands are met, and the Saudi and Iranian oil ministers are to be executed. By the end of the siege, after Carlos takes the hostages to Algiers and then Tripoli by jet, he frees the hostages without killing the Saudi or Iranian ministers. It's another failed mission for Carlos, and celebrity status or not, the PFLP are done. They kick him out. Later, it will come out that Carlos receives a ransom of about $20 million, allegedly from Saudi Arabia, to free the Saudi and Iranian ministers. A ransom that Carlos keeps for himself. As a free agent, he's linked to the KGB, linked to the East German Stasi, and he bounces around the world, taking claim for a number of attacks over the years, probably being involved in very few of them, if any at all. He's given haven in one country after another, only to be expelled by one country after another. He ultimately ends up in Sudan. While in Sudan, staying at a safe house as he recovers from testicular surgery, he is tranquilized and bound by his bodyguards and taken into custody by Sudanese authorities. And on this day in 1994, Ilyich Ramirez Sanchez, aka Carlos the Jackal, is turned over to the French, who fly him to Paris to stand trial for the 1975 murders of the DST agents. Carlos is found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. There are 139 days left in the year. On This Day is produced by me, Dave Schultz. Thank you very much for listening. On this day in 1975, the film The Rocky Horror Picture Show opens at the Rialto Theatre in London. It opens a month later in Los Angeles. It has yet to be pulled from its original 1975 release. The film is considered to be the longest-running release in film history. On this day in 2015, the U.S. Embassy in Havana, Cuba reopens after 54 years of being closed, since relations between the U.S. and Cuba are broken off in 1961. I've always wanted to go to Cuba. Maybe we'll do our first On This Day immersive travel tour to Havana. That could be fun. So if you're still listening, is your passport up to date? Talk to you tomorrow.